Start with fire, add oil, let it simmer. From the crew at 58 Surf and Stab, this isn't just a podcast, it's a sensory experience. Fresh from the coast, full of flavor, and prepared to perfection. Well, kinda. This is 58 Surf and Turf. Let's get cooked. Welcome back to 58 Surf and Turf. I am with today what has been described to me as not just one, but two history books when it comes to Portuguese surfing, and actually surfing as a whole, if I'm being honest, European surfing, all of it. João Valente, thank you for joining Miguel and I.
Thank you for having me.
I'm pretty excited to crack this history book open, see what we can find.
That's a good one, actually.
Yeah, but
Tell him, ask him about the book.
the book.
Well, let's talk about the book.
Well, I've interrupted it for this interview. That just to say that I've been working on it. I decided to put an extra effort this year. My plan is to, well, let me tell you the story. The book. What is the book? I know that. Writing a book, if I put it all together, I probably wrote a few books already.
Sure.
But as they say, a complete man has to have a kid. I have 3. Have to plant a tree. I planted a few. Don't ask me what kind.
Green ones.
And have to write a book. So I had to edit a book, and then I said, well, what is I know that writing the history of Portuguese surfing is something that I have to do. It's almost like a to complete a circle of me working in surfing in Portugal, which kind of mixes with me working surfing within my own life. But I decided to go for the easiest one, which is basically a compilation of all the writings I did on, not all, because there's someone that I have trouble enough just reading them, let alone publishing it again.
That would be an encyclopedia.
No, yeah. And so I'm doing a selection of my writings, both for Portuguese and international media, trying to, actually not trying, because I've done through this phase already. So just looking at the structure and how I'm going to divide it. And it's funny because I've decided to follow the inspiration of an article that Miguel recalls very well when we did our 100th issue on Surf Portugal. We've done the first digital networking article, sort of, because it was mid to late 90s. So the internet was kind of a novelty. We were in the first steps of the bubble that eventually bursted a few years after. But emails were all spread, and we had emails from all over the world. Mm-hmm. And then we just created this question, which is, what is surfing? And suggested a few options, from sport to religion to obsession to competition to as many as there was about 10 to 15 categories where people could choose from and elaborate why they choose those, and they could suggest their own as well. And so I'm following this suggested answers to that question that we had, and we'll organize a chapter with only about passion, another one about escapism, another one about utopia, whatever the themes that we used at the time. I'm gonna get the texts that better fit that description, that general title, and then place them together. So basically I'm working on it, and I'm on the final stages of selecting the ones to go. Then I'll have to re-edit, because I refuse to republish my shitty words again without at least correcting them. So it's gonna be a revised. Miguel could have briefed you on that or not, but I'm sort of a music obsessed. and my main obsession is Frank Zappa, and I loved when those bands in the 70s, especially Queen, that they proud themselves, for instance, in the Night at the Opera or A Day at the Races albums, the most ambitious albums they made. They loved and they proud themselves in writing the vocals, Freddie Mercury, guitars, Brian May, drums, John Deacon, and
John Deacon.
bass, John Deacon, and drums, Roger Taylor. No synthesizers, no overdubs. Whereas Zappa would always put the band, and that's it. Loads of synthesizers, loads of editing and stuff, and loops and whatever. So I kind of proud myself because, and that is a Zappa thing too. I don't care about the methodology. I just care about the end result. If the end result sounds good, who cares if they are live instruments playing or whatever, you're consuming the end product. And for this, it's a little bit like that. I don't care about the integrity of how the texts were published back then. I don't think like many texts, I don't think like that anymore. So and in this way, I offer for those 2 or 3 people who might know the texts beforehand, they'll have a few things new, which is like, why did I write it back then that way, and how I think about these issues these days. So that's basically the book that I'm working on now and should be ready. I'll launch the crowdfunding by September. And then the launching date will be for Christmas 2025.
Nice. Wow. So when you first asked that question in the mid-90s, was there one answer that seemed to be the most popular, or was it pretty spread across the board?
What do you mean? Sorry.
Like if you asked a bunch of people what is surfing and they're choosing through options, was there one answer that you found was the most common, or was it
well, lots
evenly?
of people went for adventure, and some of the most interesting stories were there too. Some really, really interesting stories. People tend to be more romantic about these things, so adventure got a lot of it. Passion got a lot of feedback for that. Kelly actually answered for obsession, not passion.
Interesting.
And it makes sense.
Yeah.
Which one? One of my favorites is one of that got the few, which is the time but in English it doesn't sound the same. In Portuguese would be the diversion. Something that is fun. So basically it's fun. That would be, in English, would be fun. It's just a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
Actually, I thought that would get a lot of response, but I think that it didn't get because surfers tend to take themselves too seriously. And they don't, just until recently, I don't think surfers did well into, reducing this whole thing to a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
And I think more and more is just that, and everything other than that is just a consequence. In essence, it's just a fun thing to do.
True. It is. That's an interesting way to look at it, because pretty much every answer that you read out, I could relate to in some way, which I'm sure was part of what was interesting about it. Obviously, we all feel that surfing is something we're passionate about, a bit obsesses over. It is just proper fun. It is a source of adventures. But to have to choose one is a very interesting prompt.
Yeah. At the time, and I'm not erasing my wrong choices, and they weren't right. Wrong. They were just the ones at the time. At the time, I was obsessed about performance, and I still am. I think every surfer, deep down in its core, is performance obsessed. If not in general, at least his own. We never. Even at advanced age, we never think I think one thing that remains with us throughout our lifetime as a surfer is that every time we go to the water within certain boundaries of conditions, we expect to surf the best wave of our life. What can change is what represents this concept of the best wave. You know, back in the day, there would be probably lots of turns and stuff. These days, it's just one that you feel truly happy when you finish it, and you don't even know why. You don't know why that happiness is in there. You just rode a wave. And that's where surfing gets really special, is that happiness that somehow happens, and is very, very hard. I mean, ego can play lots of tricks on you. And I usually say that it's virtually impossible for someone to come out of the water feeling worse than they feel before hitting the water. And when it happens, usually is the ego that gets in the middle.
Ego and expectations.
You didn't catch the waves you were supposed, or that you saw someone catch. You didn't perform as good as you imagined you would. And then those are all ego things, you know, is your expectations and stuff. But it's very hard to fight that, you know. Even I've been on and off surfing for the past 3-4 years of my life. I've been on and off surfing for multiple different reasons. And it's always the same, man. I get back to surfing and I'm happy to just be in the water. And sometimes, you know how it is, probably not because you're too young to have this surfing.
Still.
But eventually you'll get there. You go to the water, you just feel so. Sometimes you go to the water and I couldn't even catch a wave, you know, because I was out of rhythm. There was crowds for whatever reason. And I would be so happy to just be able to be out in the water, duck diving, you know, catching a few on the head, trying to make it. It's crazy, this hypnotism of surfing, you know, because even we tend to think about, you know, actually surfing a wave because that's the thing. But in a situation like this, you remember your missed paddling as clearly as you remember a wave. You know, it expands, the time expansion happens over there trying to make it and then pulling back or something.
Yeah.
You remember it as vividly and as with this sensation of time expansion as much as you do when actually riding a wave, when it seems to take so much longer than it actually took. And it works too, but it's very hard to keep it like that, because you go to the water and you don't catch a single wave and you're happy. Next day you go there and you actually manage to catch a wave and stand on your feet. You don't ride the wave, you just ride in front of the foam and you're happy as much. The next day you start riding a few waves. Man, from then on, expectations always come into the picture.
They creep right back in.
Thinking about getting out in the water and performing like your own body wouldn't allow you to anyway, but it's hard to find that expectation factor on surfing.
Interesting. Oh, I guess
Life lesson, huh?
I know. Well, I've got some work to do. I've had a kid, but I got to plant a tree now. Ways out
To write a book?
Yeah.
Have you wrote a book?
I have not.
So you have to.
So I've got
Start collecting all your texts. Makes it so much easier.
It's you know what? That's going to be a lot easier in my era. I've always just worked like, I've never handwritten an article, you know, like by the time I started writing, computers were already a part of it. So I've never had to, you know, start with writing actually with my hand, which would have been a nightmare because I have horrible penmanship, just very bad with the pen. So that era is actually of great interest to me, because I still, like, even when I first got a job at Surfing Magazine, which I think was in 2012, there were some people there who still did write, and then eventually would have to transcribe.
You were working at Surfing Magazine at 2012?
Yeah, it would have been around then. Maybe 2011 I started.
At the office?
Yeah. Yeah,
wow,
in San Clemente.
There's a very, very good chance we might stumble upon each other at the time, because I went to surfing at the time. Was it Source Media? No.
Source Interlink was the name.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I met at the time North Garrett.
Yeah.
and Tony Perez.
Uh-huh.
And during one of the, it's easy to pinpoint in time. It's the same, I think it was the first CT at Santa Cruz. And it was won by...
the only one in Santa Cruz.
The only one? So
Yeah, the
that was the
O'Neill,
one. Exactly, O'Neill Coldwater Classic or whatever. And it was Matt Wilkinson. Wilco won that one.
Probably.
And then I took a break on the contest to pay a visit to the guys at San Clemente. And and I was taken on the tour around the building. And I went to the, it was funny because when we went to the surfing offices, Tony says, well, this is where you find, besides computers and all, you're going to find bongs and stuff like that.
True. I was there at that time. Yeah, that was right when I had started, right when they had that comp in Santa Cruz. So you would have saw some computers. You would have saw one guy who was still writing with a notepad, even though he's only a year or two older than me. And maybe some other paraphernalia. Weed wasn't even legal back then in California. It is now. I guess it just would be totally fine. But anyway, I want to get back to that kind of handwriting surf articles era. I actually want to get back straight to the early days. Like how did you get involved in surfing and the surf industry even to begin with?
Because you were talking about a magazine. Which magazine are you talking about?
Yeah, of course.
And please tell us that part of
the whole context, or I jumped as well. Anyway, I'm gonna be really brief on the background to it. Well, I started surfing. My family moved to Brazil when I was barely 2 years old, and I grew up between Rio and São Paulo. Actually, Rio, then São Paulo, then Rio again. I started surfing when I was like 11 or 12 years old.
You are
in Guarujá.
You are now.
I am
right now. You are 60.
I'm 16 right now. Yeah. So when I was about 12 years old, one of the most, one of the oldest and most vivid images I have of myself in the beach was I learned to because we had a swimming pool at home, so I learned to swim between one. I wasn't even, just as when we arrived in Brazil, like 2 years old, my father would ask me to jump on the pool. It was a pretty big pool actually, and I would go catch the leaves on the bottom of the pool, and I couldn't swim, but I could dive to the bottom of the pool and come back again. Then my father would pull me back. So I learned to swim really early, and one of the most vivid memories I have to being on the beach would be my father holding me still while my mother would wash me on sunscreen, because they knew when they let go of me, I would disappear onto the ocean and wouldn't come back unless for two things: for eating and for leaving the beach. Actually. Yeah. I would spend the whole day swimming around that was very early. It would be like 6-7 years old probably. And then as I've moved on, and I started doing something, and these memories I'm telling you about was back when, because we moved to São Paulo when I was 8 years old, and then stayed 9 years there, and then moved back to Rio. And in São Paulo, I started swimming around, surfer to surfer on the lineup, asking, "Hey man, can you borrow your boards to ride a wave?" Because in Brazil, at those times, it was the 70s in Brazil, people would do that. I don't know if they do that these days, but back then it was normal. And now, come on, kid, grab a wave. And then I started learning how to stand and how to cut the wave. My plan was always to catch a wave and ride the wave as far away as I could from the guy who landed me, and then paddle on the other direction. So up until the guy would reach me, I would be surfing, Yeah. And then eventually have. Then one day, because we were there for the whole summer vacation, and some of the guys, including some of the heavy locals, would show up only for the weekends. And I was the pet kid of all the guys who hang around the locals' point of the beach. I had 10, 11 years old. I was the pet kid for everybody. Everybody enjoyed me. They thought I was. They always sent me to do the things that they didn't want. You know, those pranks and stuff like that. You know?
Yeah.
And I would be up for everything all the time. Of course, I started getting, you know, a little too bit. How can you say comfortable with the situation?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I was playing my trick, my board trick during the weekend, and I played it on one of the heavy locals. And result, there was a pole like this without the top bar on it.
Yeah.
And they opened my shorts and they placed me locked by my shorts within the pole for the whole afternoon under the sun without me moving. I'd be crying angry, and every time the guy who did that, the heavy local would approach me and say, "Are you calm already? Have you learned the lesson?" I would say yes, and he would be approaching. When he would get really close, I would just punch. I would just kick the sand onto his face, and then it will start all again.
The cycle just starts over.
I wouldn't just play the yeah. I'm not doing that. No. If you did that to me, you're gonna suffer too. So I should know better. I learned.
You learned the lesson.
Eventually.
Nice.
But yeah. So I said I would cut the story short and made it so long. Anyway, we moved back to Portugal in '84. And at the time, the key point, and this is a funny story, when I was 19 years old, went to college, started with law school, and then I hated it, kind of did it for my parents, but hated it. And then I've learned there was social communication. We were in Porto, where I made my first friends, surfing friends in Portugal. And then I learned about social communication course here in Lisbon and moved to my sister's house in Lisbon. And I had two lives at the time. During the weekends, I was the surfer. And during the weekdays, I was the college cinema obsessed kid that would, eat up because, moving, I was always culture thirsty, and coming from Brazil, which at that time was so moved away from the center of everything, and then come to Lisbon, which was far from being the multicultural place it is today, but still, as compared to Brazil, was, paradise for me. So I would eat up as much as easy. I would see 10 movies a week on
Wow.
theaters, sometimes more, exhibits. I would consume everything. So these were two
Art-related.
lives, yeah. And then when I turned 21, my godfather made me a choice. João, it's your birthday, 21st anniversary. It's a very important date. What do you want for your gift, for your Christmas gift, for your birthday gift? And I said, and I was hesitant at the time, either would be a new board or a photographic camera. And I opt for the photographic camera.
Wow.
Funny thing is, if I had chosen the new, of course, you never know how these things end up, but I think, analyzing from my path, if I had chosen the surfboard, probably surfing wouldn't be as important in my life as it became. Because when the first thing I shot with my new camera was surfing. And then I started going with my friends, and they would be surfing and I would be shooting. And then when the guys came up to me in '87, and through mutual friends, this guy comes up to me, Zé Seabra, knocks at my parents' door and said, hey, João there. I'm Zé. I'm with a friends. We are doing this new surf magazine calling Surf Portugal, and we heard that he had some photos. So I welcomed them into my house. They chose some photos. One of my photos ended up on the cover of the first issue, a bunch of them into the interior. I was studying journalism. I loved surfing above anything. So things kind of started falling together. And then after a few issues, and that was a tricky few years on Surf Portugal. And but after just 2 or 3 issues, I would read and come on, these guys are writing these with their feet. It's like I felt ashamed of reading the magazine for so many errors and the basic language, because like so many times you were just a bunch of kids wanted to in some way working with surfing. It was the same. The spark is the initial spark is the same for everybody. You just want something that allow us to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Which many years later, I came to a conclusion. And for all of those who thinking about it for your future, I'll let you know that working with surfing with the goal of getting more waves is the same of getting married with the goal of having more sex.
That is might be the best quote of our podcast so far, just over across the board, not even this episode, it's the whole
I
thing.
have to drink water after that.
Anyway, so that was the start. And then, when I saw that happening, I said, no, this is my life. It just happened. I wasn't looking for it. I just, I was tapping all those things that I loved, and I already, by the time, and the funny thing is, and it's a story that very few people knew. I was always on the brat group of my classes. I was never on the front row, never.
Yeah.
So I was one with those middle grades, but that just did enough to keep on going. So I was never the bright student. And it was funny. I was very bad at Portuguese. I hated Portuguese. And even more so, I hated, I have no idea how is the name of it in English, but in Portuguese it's redaction. It's where you have to writing lessons. So I hated that. And once we were there, São Paulo, still, and I was totally surfing hangover. I was in the middle of town. It was far away from any vacation in my horizon. I had no way to get to the beach. So I was missing surfing so much. And there was kind of a surprise test. You have to make a description of whatever you want. And I decided, I don't know why, I can't remember. I had like 14 years. I was 14 years old or something. And I described the breaking of a wave from the point of a flat ocean to the surge, to the tipping, to the breaking point. And I described as fully detailed as I could the breaking of a wave. And then we had to read it out loud for the class. And when I finished my text, all of the there was a silence in the room. And then all of a sudden, what was that? And some clapping and stuff. And I said, whoa, what happened here?
Wow.
I'm not used to getting this in school.
Yeah.
And it's funny how things, when looking back at your past, how you can always find some sign of course, being a prophet from the future back to the past is easy. But it's funny to see how things kind of fit in their places. Anyway, the guy asked, I got more and more involved. Then I asked to write the editorial for the first anniversary issue. And then when people finally to get it together, the guys who were kind of not fully involved dropped out of it. And then I got invited to be one of the founders of when it really became a company, a proper company, an enterprise. And then from then on, it was the beginning of almost 30 years story, running the magazine, starting as a photography and writing contributed. Then photography was a tricky thing because I was either photographing or surfing, and then I had to make the choice, and then I chose surfing more and more. Still, I kept the cameras there because that meant I could jump on on travels because I felt early that nobody was taking pictures and writing at the same time, or very few people were doing that. So that was an advantage for me because I shoot sort of well and I wrote okay. And then and from then on we've eventually stepped to editor, then publisher, and that was it.
Wow. Climbed the whole thing.
Yeah. It's I think working within the surfing industry, especially in small business, I don't say that you join a big corporation if there are any still over there, but there are big companies still. In spite of it all, there are still big companies in surfing. But starting a surfing company, be it media one or clothing or accessories or apparel or whatever, you have to go through all of it. There's nothing in the whole business that you won't do, and it creates a really nice scope of the work, and it's fun. Now it's getting more specialized. People start doing stuff from the start. It's different. It's a different environment. It's a very different thing, and it's getting even more different than we ever thought it would.
It is quickly.
Yeah, and buckle up for the future.
Yeah, let's see how that all goes with AI.
Yeah.
How did it end it? How did it end it?
The magazine?
Yeah.
Pretty much the same way every other magazine ended. Advertisers started pulling off. Sales started dropping much before the advertisers start pulling off. And eventually we came to the conclusion. And at the time, the magazine, throughout its almost 30 years of history, it had very many crisis times. And I was always the one who kept it going. And this last time, we got caught in what I call the perfect storm scenario, because we got together the 2008 crisis, which actually kind of hit hard on surfing. Would hit like 2 to 3 years after that, especially in Europe. But we had the 2008, the subprime crisis. We had the changing environment within the media business in general. Everybody was crazy about websites, but nobody knew exactly how to monetize on it. And then we had the most unexpected of all the ones, even though I had read carefully and tentatively the Sultan's Phil Jarrett's Salt and Suits. But nobody, I didn't see it coming, the downfall of the surf industry. I didn't see it coming at least as hard as it hit. It was brutal the way it fell. So I got caught within this thing. And the fact is, I didn't have the energy. I didn't have the energy at the time to keep on going online. Although we were doing pretty good online, we were the only surfing website without cameras that were, putting up a fight with the websites that had cameras, beach cameras. And of course, with a load difference, because surfing kind of I don't know if reduced is the correct word, but I think from all those moments, all those crises, the surf wearing, I think it's kind of all connected. I think the surfing market, all of a sudden, and after years of growth, appealing for a non-surfing audience, it kind of converged towards the experience of surfing, and everything that helped you get out in the water and catching a few waves was thriving, while everything else was falling behind. And when I see everything else, I see fashion, surfing fashion. People were determined to invest a lot on their surfing experience, but not on looking like a surfer. Information it was only good as it made your surfing experience better, being it tutorials, being it surfboards and equipment reviews, and surf school, surf tours, everything that kind of drove you towards the waves were thriving, and it's still a little bit like that. And everything that was perceived as an accessory to it, to this essential act of actually riding the wave, was falling apart as far as a big business went. And we were in a part of it, in the media part of it. People still wanted to learn a few things about surfing, but not paying for that. And basically that was the thing. After, I still found an investor, but it was swimming against the current. And then I came to peace with myself, because I'm always very hard on myself. I thought that my performance as an entrepreneur wasn't as good as it could be, and I still think like that. There's lots of people who would do better in the same situation that I was. I think there are people who would do better than me, but still, when I looked at this whole scenario, surfing shutting doors, Transworld Surf, Surfer. When Surfer closed the doors, I said, oh, I'm in pits myself. If those guys close their doors, what could I, my little Portuguese magazine on my corner here, what could I do different? And then I asked Nick Carroll, man, explain to me, after Surfing closed, how come Australia still has 4 running print magazines going? I think it was 4 at the time, because Tracks was still printing, Surfing Life, Surfing World, and White Horses. and Stab, I think Stab was still printing at the time too.
We may have been, although print was never really big for us.
If not regularly, at least one, especially I have a big one with Paco on the cover.
Yeah.
Still have, actually I have the 2 first years of Stab. And Nick, he laughed, as he always do, and answered something. And he said, man, I wish I had a simple explanation. But at the time, it was like 3 or 4 years ago when we started our podcast. And he said that mainly he saw 2 reasons. One is a harsh competition between surfboard makers and the tourism, surf sharks, surf camp industry, which was pretty strong in the advertising. And the other one was pretty interesting. He said, in a place where pretty much everyone in the whole population, at least for a little bit time in their lives, they consider themselves to be surfers, to have a board and go out at the ocean. Actually having and reading surf magazines was a differential between posers and true surfers, and reading a magazine made you a true surfer. And I found that pretty interesting. But I think it's a matter of time. Although yesterday I read a very, very interesting article about the printing coming back for the next few years. But as we all know, it will never be in the same models that we had before. I mean, the great Steve Pasman, the most visionary of all surf publishers ever, even more so than John Severson himself. He felt it years ago when he created, in the early 90s, the Surfer Journal. He saw it so much ahead of all of us, and still running these days, and a bigger success than it has ever been. But when it comes back, it will be like that. Basically, luxury connectionable magazines, never the conception.
Not the primary way that you're consuming information, which it was for a while.
Yeah.
I think, even when I was a kid, if the only way I could learn anything about surfing, know anything about it, was through the magazines coming to my house.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you might see like a random spot on TV, 30 seconds, the news did a thing about something, but it was like the only way for you to plug into anything in that world was just through a magazine.
Yeah, it's an interesting time now, because as part of the big chunk of our of our audience is totally Instagram, instant image, instant gratification environment, which is, you know, the sign of the times. At the same time, there's a very, very big group of surfers that are getting older, and they are looking, because we always, surfing magazines, everything, what is it if not just a way of extending your surf experience beyond the waves, beyond the lineup? It's always like that. And this audience, this older audience keeps looking forward to extend the surfing experience, and they are demanding more in-depth content and things that can, you know, go beyond the 1 to 2 second dopamine shot of the videos that we make, that, you know, our consumption these days, where a 5-minute video is considered to be too long. So yeah, so it's an interesting time. I think we're gonna see some really interesting stuff happening in the future.
Totally. When you were running the mag, is there a certain trip or something that sticks out as like the peak? And I don't want you to think that's the peak in terms of like the peak of the industry and things made sense financially at that time, but the peak of just like you as somebody who fell in love with surfing, being somewhere with the right crew of people, getting the right waves, where it was just something that you found really personally meaningful. Yeah,
there's a few one. And with different thought, because there's your own personal experience within the context of your own life, and then you know, like the first time a whole group went to Hawaii together was pretty special. But I have to say that it kind of got mixed together, because I consider the pinnacle of my surfing life is the discovery of Madeira. My family came from Madeira. My mother is Madeiran, and we always went there during summertime, because that was the time when living in Brazil would be spend the summer vacation here in Portugal, and then we'd go visit Madeira. And of course, we didn't even think of it. Since that time, I remember people say, there's no waves in Madeira. There's no beaches, there's no waves. Of course. And when I got here, started working on surfing for years and years, I heard the same old story. There's no surfing in Madeira. If you want to surf Portuguese islands, you have to go to the Azores. Yeah, of course. But then in the late 80s, I catch a French magazine, windsurfing magazine, which had an article on Madeira, and there was a lineup of a long left, Uluwatu looking left. And it kind of stayed in my mind. And then in 93, Zé Seabra came up to me and said, hey, João, let's go to Madeira. And let's not tell anyone. This way, if you find something there, we can keep the secret for ourselves. If you don't find anything, nobody will be teasing us about it. So yeah, it's a win-win situation. Let's go. And we went there, and we were so clueless about what to do once we got there that we got a map, and said, where do you go now? And we looked at it, the North Shore. It's always the North Shore, right? Not because we saw any geographic favorable configuration.
Yeah.
It was just because it was the North Shore. Of course, it was the most exposed to the swell window, but still, we didn't have any clue about anything, those things at the time. But there we went to the North Shore, and then we found what some years later, this was December 93. And then we stayed there for 10 days. And it's funny because since being in the North Shore, first day, there was a big swell, stormy swell with lots of onshore winds. But we could easily identify the north coast left. Say, there's a wave there, there's a wave there. We couldn't see. You've been there already?
Yes.
Okay, so imagine the north on a 15 feet swell onshore. you hardly can spot, well, where's the entry and exit points here?
Even on a approachable day, I wonder that sometimes. I'm like, okay, that's a good wave, but oof, there's some big boulders to climb over.
Exactly. So yeah, next day, the swell had dropped like to less than half its size. It went dead glassy, man. And from that day on, I couldn't move. Like the guy said, oh, let's go to another coast. And every time I would pass through Contreras, I said, okay, you go explore, you leave me here. And then of course, everybody stayed.
Yeah.
Nobody on the island. But on the last day, we met Lauro, the Brazilian dentist that was there. And who would take, because he was an itinerary dentist, so he would travel around the island, giving his free consultas? Attending people around the island for free. Sometimes he did that out of, and then and he would take some kids from Funchal with him, so they would be trying to surf at the time. And those were the only surfers we met to that trip. Next year, we went back in January to spend the whole month there, and that's when we found Jardim do Mar and all those breaks. Just like 4 weeks before us, Ted Grambo had been there with Evan Slater and Keone Watson, I think.
Yeah.
No, Evan Slater. Who else? I think it was Keone Watson, a Japanese guy. I can't remember his name. Anyway, they were there, and we were still. Man, the last day of our first trip, my last day, I spent on a rock with a bag full of films in my head, thinking, "What should I do? Should I take them back or just drop these in the water?" Zé would be out in the street, just screaming, "Throw it in the water!" And I couldn't. But we used it in a 3-part article, mixed with photos from the Azores and from southern Portugal, which at the time was far from being a known place. I mean, Ponta Ruiva was a secret spot back then. Mm-hmm. And then we mixed in a 3-part article about Atlantis. We wouldn't say anything about where the photos were. It was a thing about Atlantis, because there's some stuff about the Azores being the one of the remains of the Atlantis continent, whatever. We just wrote some random words about Atlantis, published the photos, and it was kind of nobody knew exactly what it was.
Yeah.
And then on the last trip, like 1 month or 2 months before our article on Madeira came out, Surfer came out with the article by Ted Grambo. And then next year, I kind of guided Aaron Shang, Shane Dorian, and the great late Todd Chesser, and to Madeira. And I remember Ches, I went up meeting them at the airport because I knew Shang. And Shang called me, "Hey, I'm gonna be at the airport. Meet us there to grab a beer and have some talk." And then I remember clearly Todd asking me, "How big can he get?" I said, "Man, at the time I didn't know it could be bigger than that." I said, "Well, to be conservative, I'd say it will perfectly hold like 12 Hawaiian." And then Chesser, who's he has now these days, he has this fame of being this really strong guy. He opened up those big blue eyes. "That's big enough." And I said, "Oh, that is so cool, because this guy, 12-foot Hawaii. No, I can handle that. That's easy for me." That's good enough for me. I don't want any bigger than that. That was.
But there was one guy. Sorry, there was one guy that was already going there, but really quiet. Bill. You want to tell that story about the Bill?
The Bill
from America?
Huh.
Yeah, as soon
Bill, huh?
Bill
Okay.
Bill Finnegan.
Yeah.
Eventually he
burying himself.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But there was a group of people that as soon as Surfer published that article, very, very poorly disguised by our dear Sam George, It was called Garden by the Sea. I mean, and it is an Atlantic island, Portuguese speaking, called Garden by the Sea. I mean,
Okay. Well,
you don't have to be a genius to go to do your research and
yeah.
get what.
Just get the translator out and there you go.
And then, of course, lots of Americans started, paying a visit. Among them, Will Henry, who, because of Madeira, would become the founder of Save the Waves Coalition that eventually would originate the World Surfing Reserves Program.
Mhm.
And through a guy that I think you're going to interview too, João Macedo, but he'll tell that story much better than me. And of course, Bill Finnegan, who for whoever might have read his book, The Barbarian Days 1, he dedicates a very important chapter in
The
his
last
book,
chapter of the book.
on Madeira. And and it was a part of a very, very funny group of people. There was a guy there, can't remember his name. I just remember him saying, "Man, introduce me to someone who might have some marijuana seeds, man. I just need 1 square meter and I'm gonna feed this whole island." Oh, come on, man. Really? I don't know anyone. There was this crazy guy, this Scotsman, which was a crazy guy, would write anything, Mona.
Yeah.
And it was a wild bunch back then. Those first guys who actually made Madeira their getaway spot. And that was a pinnacle for my life. I think, I would never have that experience again. To find a place out of the blue without any clues to it, and it actually end up being a surfing paradise as it is. So I think it's still possible. There's still a few places out there, but I think it's very, very hard to find a place like Madeira because, for one thing, it has one of the rarest surfing phenomena in the world, which is a proper big wave point break. Actually, most big waves are outside reefs or reef breaks. It's rare to have an actual point break, not some reef that breaks very outside and kind of follows the coastline. No, it's an actual point break that follows. And then the amount, I mean, I still consider that vision of arriving to Jardim do Mar and seeing the sets stacking up against Jardim do Mar, Ponta Pequena, and Paul do Mar, all the way to Ponta do Sargo, and it's one of the great, or the Pargo. It's another fish.
Yeah.
It's still one of the most mesmerizing views in surfing. It's like, it's magical, isn't it?
It is, with the massive cliffs. It's just
exactly.
It doesn't
And I
really
think
get
that
better.
would be the high. That was the highlight. But there was so many fun moments and significant for the Portuguese surfing history. But from a personal point of view, I think that is one.
That was also where you got involved in a song, right?
Oh yeah, exactly.
Because you told us that you were, and I know you, and you are really a maniac about music.
Yeah.
You used to say that if you weren't a surfing journalist, you would be a musician journalist, right?
Probably I would end up there.
Or movies.
I was never talented enough to follow my passions. I was never a good enough surfer to become a pro surfer, so I had to rely to writing about surfing. I would never. I mean, I can barely play a ringer on the door, let alone an instrument. So I would end up writing about music and things. But yeah, that was a funny thing about this American artist, really, really undiscovered artist, and I've talked to that with some of the guys over there, and I think it's ridiculous that with the kind of art or surf artists that are every single Surfer Journal issue is published there, with all those Hawaiian cliches, Japanese market-oriented stuff, those kitschy airbrush things, that nobody did a full in-depth article with Darren Ithaca Pappas. Ithaca for me is one of the most talented, multifaceted artists I've ever met. I mean, he started out as a photographer, ended up doing the first ever NWA photo shoot, then started sculpting from old surfboards. Then when he arrived in Portugal, he would started making music and spoken word / rap music, and ended up being because he would always write about his life. His whole life was his source of material for his writing, his music, his sculptures. Everything is a story being told, and a story centered about his own life. And yeah, he ended up with 2 trips we took together, one to Madeira and one to Morocco, where I became, with all the other guys, a part of the story. And then on the Madeira one, the single Seabra is Mad, which was voted the best single of the year in Portugal at the time, and the best album. It also told our story about Madeira. And because he went, when Zé and me returned to Madeira the following year, we decided each one of them would invite a friend to follow along.
Yeah.
And I invited Darren, Ithaca, and Zé invited Nuno Mata and Gregorio, and we both invited Gregorio to go with us. And it was really, really fun. And he wrote the story. So he got first day at Jardim do Mar, clean 12-foot day. And it said, wow, this is the biggest experience of my life. It was fantastic. That was an unreal trip. 20 days of surfing, not a single day of wind. Every day was glassy. Every single day. I said there was no winds in it. It's impossible. Yeah, it's not that true, but it's quite often gets glassy there.
Yeah. Wow, that's insane. You had some children, you planted a tree, right in the book, and you even worked your way into a song. So it's a good mix, my friend.
I think so.
Yeah.
What about right now? What are you doing now?
Man, been for since 2018, I think we started doing Boia podcast, which was the first Portuguese language surfing podcast. Of course, surfing is a part of it. We always talk about music and movies and cooking and whatever interests us, whatever interests us, we talk about. It's a very free form podcast started out with Julio Adler, which is one of my life gurus in many aspects. And he started it by himself. Then he invited me to go along, and then we started doing it. And then later on, we were joined by Bruno Bocaiuva. And is a weekly podcast. It's on every single platform. It's audio only, not we did a few videos during the COVID year, but mostly it's an audio one, and we talk about everything from music to surfing to usually the only thing we don't talk about is the things that everybody is expecting us to talk about. Like there's big news on surfing, and then everybody's talking about it, and then it's sometimes we even on prior to start recording, we got to talk about that. Usually the things that we talk during preparation, the things we said that we have to talk about is the ones that we never talk about.
Yeah.
We kind of forget about it. So it's totally free form. The only things that the features in the podcast are the 3 musics, or depending. Yesterday we had Pekel as an invitee. But every single one, every one of the hosts and the eventual invitees have to bring on a song and explain why they're playing that song. But then we talk about everything. We have sadly these days, but we have weekly obituaries because every single week there's somebody of importance dying, either in music or in surfing or in movies or whatever. And the thing that we call talking image, which is before it was some surfing image or some image in general that we wanted. Could it, and talk the story behind that? Could it be the Joey Ramone at Manhattan Beach holding surfboards, to the G.I. Joe taking a board out of trestles back in the day? Iconic surfing photos, or just photos that we enjoyed and talking about now. And now we transform it, the readers send their pictures, their personal pictures, and send us audios talking about the story behind the picture, and then run. Those are the only permanent features on the podcast. Other than that, it's totally free form. We just talk about, and if it's less than 90 minutes, some of our listeners don't even care to listen. We try to make it shorter, and got so much backlash that we okay, man,
2 hours, 3 hours,
2 hours, 3 hours,
87 minutes. They go, what is this? Slop.
Exactly, the best companion for washing dishes and doing long rides.
Yeah.
But you're very opinionated, and you have very interesting opinions, and you talk a lot. Of course, you talk a lot about also the contest, the WSL.
Yeah.
You and Bruno are also
working
as commentators. So can you? But I'm not asking you this cliche question of what is surfing now, how is surfing now, but come on. Give me an idea of what do you think about the whole world of surfing right now, and I mean not just the contest part, but also the contest part.
Well, it's fragmented, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's getting more and more fragmented. You have surfing as even as a lifestyle, even as a sport. I think surfing is fragmented even within its bigger families. Back in the day, it was just the recreational surfer and the competitive surfer. These days, you have fragmented kind of surfers in each one of those big groups. So you have pro surfers that are competition pros. You have professional free surfers. You have free surfers. You have recreational surfers that are serious ones, and you have the ones, because in a way, and Portugal is a great example of that. Portugal just became the Ibiza of surfing. So it's a preferred summer spot for European surfers that come here for, it's a healthy thing. They basically come here to party, so they party a lot, and then they clean up during the day. So it's even better than Ibiza, and where those places where you party at night and hangover during day.
Yeah,
at least you hang over a little bit, but after the first cold water duck dive, you're gonna work on that hangover much better.
Yeah.
But so you have lots of different people living surfing within the old families, because surfing these days can afford, for instance, in Portugal, people can have their normal lives, studying college, applying for a job, and still compete on the national circuit with some competence without interfering in each other. Then there are those who can go beyond that and start trying out the European Pro Juniors or the European QSs or the other cons, and then try and move along. So you have different sorts of living within competitive pro surfing. Now there's a new group of surfings being created around the artificial waves, especially in places with huge populations like São Paulo, which is on the verge of opening up their fourth, I think, wave pool over there. So more and more, because you have like 1 hour to, depending on traffic, it can take as much as 4 hours, but that's an exception. But you go you never take less than 1 hour to 2 hours to go from São Paulo, inland São Paulo, the capital of the state, to the shore, to Santos or Guarujá. So more and more guys just surf the wave pools. And I think that in the future, we're going to have a surf pool exclusive group of surfers. And eventually, those will be separate groups of competitors too. I remember when they started running those flow rides surf contests, where the best surfers weren't surfers, ocean surfers, were skimboarders. Was Bill Bryant was by far the greatest surfer at the flow rider. So I think in the future there will be surfers. Is a redemption days for Ricky Kane, right?
Yeah, it's coming back.
Exactly.
Watch out, North Shore.
Yeah, and there's gonna be surfers who are specialized in artificial waves, and that can take. They'll probably be able to surf in the ocean, but will never be as good in the ocean as they are in the wave pools, and vice versa. People who are good surfers in the ocean, and eventually they're going to be good surfers in the pool too, but not as good as the wave pool specialists. So I think more and more surfing is drifting away from the subculture that we once were as a group. There's gonna always be subculture, little niches of people surfing according to different sets of rules. But as a general perception, we are not that. I think there's no sense for me these days. It never made much sense, let's be honest about it. But back in the 90s, where people like Nat Young and others started coining the expression surf tribe, I think to talk about these days about a surfing tribe, it's totally pointless. There's not a surfing tribe these days. I think it got banalized in a way. I usually say that I used to say that back in the day, you name the kind of occasion. It could be political ideology conference within Frankfurt. It could be a wedding in inland America, wherever you went. If you find one that you don't know him or her before, and you find out that that person is a surfer, back in the day, you would connect and spend the whole night or day or occasion talking about surfing, because there was this
connection,
a knowledge that we were part of something very special that very few people knew about it. These days, everybody knows about it. All the cliches were explored to the limit. The commonplaces, everything was explored to the limit, to the point that these days, if I'm on those occasions and I learn that somebody is a surfer, my natural instinct these days is I won't even mention that I'm a surfer too. You know, the last thing I need is more surf talk, usually with lots of cliches and stuff. And I try to understand what kind of surfer it is first before engaging in a surfing conversation. So it changed a lot. The environment changed a lot. I think surfing is as much a professional sport of sorts as it is a recreational activity. And some facts, they keep as valid today as they ever were. Like the fact that this is still a pointless activity, which is one of the most attractive things as far as I'm concerned to surfing, is that it serves no purpose. So it's the ultimate ludic action. And the fact that it's a fun thing to do, very fun thing. It still is the only way we can actually interact with moving energy, not just being subject to it, but to interact with it. And it has, if we learn about, and now going a little bit more towards the, let's say, the more 70s part of Drew Campion part of of surfing. If you think about the importance of waves within the universe of phenomena, for me it's very hard to believe that you can really get into it and you can block it out of you, either consciously or unconsciously. But it's very hard to me to believe that you are unaffected by the act of riding waves within a deep level. You can block it, and sometimes block it, usually through the ego, which is the greatest blocker of all these things. And as like Matt Warshaw put it in a so well during an interview, because that's my main philosophy, when he says that, well, surfing, unfortunately, surfers can be assholes. And even good surfers, there are assholes that are very, very good surfers. And the basic philosophy I have for everything is that the important thing is not what you do, but why you do it. It's the reason. I've practiced it for almost 15 years. I was a very keen practitioner of Ashtanga yoga. That all those contortions, all those stuff are meant to destroy your ego. And some of the greatest egos I've ever met in my life were actually yoga, some of them yoga teachers, So it's not what you do, but the reasons that take you, the reasons and your motivations towards you that can make it special or not. Surfing, love, anything that you can mention can either have very great outcomes or the worst outcomes humanity has ever known, like territorialism and stuff like that. I'm not a adversary of all kinds of localism. I think there are some localisms that are very justified. And especially in this age of instant gratification and everything, it's good that you have to work your way into a lineup.
Yeah.
I think the classic lineups of the world shouldn't be open for everybody to take on. It's some places demand that you work your way into it. And especially in this age of instant gratification for everything, that some of the great things in life are still hard to get is a very good thing. I think it's a positive thing.
True. Well, hey, I'm happy we were able to pull the surf talk out of you today. We weren't just two souls running into each other in Frankfurt. So that's all I have for you. Miguel, any more questions?
Yeah, I have a lot more questions, but I think we will do a João Valente take 2 in another time.
Yeah. Less about me and more about
now we discovered you, and then we are going to discover in another opportunity a few more of your opinions about surfing.
There's some opinions.
There's some.
I actually worked
on
something for Michael now after the feedbacks that he gave me, and I've been working on something. Let's see if it can get published eventually in the future.
All right.
Nice. Well, hey, I guess part 2 will come at some point. Until then, see you later.
Thank you guys very much for having me, and it was a pleasure.